Orcas Island. Okay. I have some friends in Vashon. That's probably far from there, right?
It's the kind of thing that's like not far at all as a line on a map, but is like a ferry to the mainland, an hour-long drive, and a ferry to another island type
Yeah.
scenario.
Did you ever listen to that band, The Pharmacy? Do you know them?
I do know. Yeah, actually a friend was just talking about them maybe coming to play on Orcas Island maybe like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Well, they're doing like reunion shows now, but they were like they've broken up sort of, but they're just like really good friends of ours. So we used to play a lot of shows with them. The So So Glos, my main band, play with The Pharmacy a lot.
Sweet.
They're fun. Great band.
Beautiful. So when we kind of like before we hit record talked about this, I did that series about Bright Eyes, and then at the end, in an act of real kindness that I appreciate, Connor came on it and had a conversation that I really enjoyed. And I kind of want to place this in time for a few reasons. This would have been April 23, I guess. And I think you were there. You have like an Instagram carousel of like videos and stuff like that that are all like it just says LA. And he mentions you in it, like, yeah, my friend Alex from the So So Glos is here, I've been writing songs. So like I had that conversation. It was right around that same time, I think. And so then that I think is gonna there's gonna be a line directly drawn from that period of time to this Bright Eyes album that's coming out. I'll let you fill that in. But then in between those two things, you got a cancer diagnosis, essentially. Anything you don't want to talk about, you're welcome to not talk about. But
No, it's all public now.
yeah,
My whole medical history I've made public for better or for worse. I think for better.
I think for better too, in the lead up to this, as you share it right now in this context, can you give the like very fast version of the of what you were born with so people understand how this is like cancer on top of a separate thing that you've dealt with your whole life?
Yeah. I mean, just as a background, the 5 minute, I was born with a rare metabolic disorder called homocystinuria. I don't think it's quite one in a million, but it's somewhere near there, maybe one and a half a million or something.
Yeah.
It's an autosomal recessive trait, which means both parents have to be carriers. Basically, I was born without an enzyme to break down protein, two amino acids, homocysteine and methionine. So the short version is I can't have any protein. Luckily, I was diagnosed at newborn screening. Most children in the United States at birth now are screened for a multitude of genetic disorders. But at the time when I was born, 1987, there was only, I think, 6 states that were mandatory to do it. So had I been born in a different state, even just New Jersey, I think, or Connecticut, I would have had
Wow.
it catastrophic. Untreated homocystinuria can lead to bone problems, ocular lens dislocation, heart attack, stroke, brain damage, early death. It sounds like one of those commercials where death is just like slid in.
Right.
Experience heart attack, stroke, constipation, diarrhea, death, or vomiting.
No, no, not good. I mean, I listened to an interview with you earlier about that you're slipping that in, but
Yeah,
if that's on your radar as a child, I think you kind of talked about like the potential for death to just kind of be waiting out there for me is telling me
yeah.
put the fucking pedal down and go live your life while you got it kind of
I
attitude.
think artistically and maybe spiritually, like I was just always aware of that fragility of life and like almost to a fault how urgent I need to do a lot of things. I think it's also, I feel blessed for that. I think it's like a gift to have somewhere to put all that anxiety because once I put it there, it doesn't really belong to me anymore. And I think that's the whole point of art. Like in the So So Glos, I didn't really go into it. Alex Orange Drink is like a solo project that I started while the Glos were on like a little break about, I guess, 2016, like right around the Trump
Yeah,
thing where like the world was ending. I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna dive into like the most personal stuff, you
right,
know.
right.
That's where I put that kind of shit.
Well, good. And so, all right, so I think maybe let's go to Los Angeles in the period where you're working on this record, which is going to then get almost immediately after that news of a cancer diagnosis. But what brought you out to Conor Oberst's house in LA? Like, why were you out there writing songs? Like, how did that come to be?
But okay, so this was last winter. Not last winter, but the winter before,
Right.
2023 winter. I think I went out there in January. Connor invited me out to stay. I was going out there to work on some music with a few other people. someone that I was really psyched about was Tim Armstrong, singer of Rancid. We were going to work on some songs and some other stuff. And I was like, okay, if I don't go out and like, it just seemed like a good time to spend a few months in LA for the winter.
Yeah.
I didn't really have much going on in New York at this time. So I just kind of threw a bunch of my stuff in my car and with my friend we drove across the country, kind of like a psycho. I just drove to LA in the middle of the winter with a tentative plan, not a big plan. And Connor was like, "Stay at my house," of course. Connor's always been so generous and such a good friend
Yeah.
since we met when we were touring with Desaparecidos, I think 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what put me in LA.
And so you're there to work on music. How, at what point does
I had no plans to work on music with Connor. It was,
exactly
yeah, we were just gonna be roommates and hang out. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know he was trying to work on a new album.
like, hey, this will be a good chance to go try and play some music? Or did you guys just start playing on a porch and that started yielding songs and then that started becoming bright?
It was totally a natural kind of hangout, and it felt like organic. It felt like writing music with my brothers, which I have done in my band since our parents got divorced in 1991. Like we started a band when I was 4 and my brother was 5 and my other brother was 6, like, product of a divorce. And we're just, okay, we'll start this little
You
gang.
just did it.
Exactly. But like starting writing with Connor was felt the same way. It was just like finish each other's sentences and like it felt like a cosmic thing. We're just getting back to like this DIY primal way of just creating.
And you felt like you were doing that, or he felt like he was doing that, or both people just that's what was happening?
I can't fully speak for him, but I think like probably it felt mutual.
The songs that I've heard so far, which I haven't listened to the whole record, just the songs everyone else has heard, the first two singles, and they feel like they feel primal in the way you're describing. But I don't know, like
I think Connor wanted a more like stripped down record.
I think that like if you're like, oh, I want a more stripped down record, I think that or whatever that feels loose and all of that, I feel like you're whether it was planned or not, a good ingredient to pull in, and that I can hear that in your music.
I hope so.
It's funny, like the part where you're like, yeah, just like me and my brothers when we were 5 years old and we're
Yeah.
just kind of writing and finish each other's sentences. Like to that, you're to a certain degree, you're literal brothers
Hmm.
and you're learning at the same time as each other, and that's just what you're doing. It's funny to be like, yeah, and then also with Conor Oberst, notoriously a songwriter, to be like, I'm finishing that guy's sentences. He's such a person you envision as like that guy with his notepad writing these crazy ass songs. And then
Yeah.
I love that. I love that vision of you guys banging stuff out on a porch.
It just seems like a family. Everyone has different experiences and history, but I just feel like most musicians and are, have a similar shared, I don't want to say trauma, but just kind of like growing up, you're a little bit of an outcast. You have all this other stuff happen and it just feels like a tribe. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
a rock and roll tribe or
It seems like So So Glos have that in New York, and any role you've played in like DIY music scene in New York from the time you were young through now. And it also seems, I think one of the listeners and friends who's been on the show, Justin Corwin, mentioned something along the lines of like, for me, the entire Bright Eyes legacy is Connor choosing to keep on keeping on with friends. There's sort of like some of these
yeah.
people at these residency shows and everything like that. It's like these people are the same people from back when he was a teenager that
Yeah,
are,
I think Connor, I think something that's similar about our bands, and it operates kind of as this extended family where we welcome people in, both creatively and artistically, and just like spiritually. And like Connor's real like that. I don't know how to say. It's just he's like Connor's never lost his perspective on that of like, working with different people that he likes and trusting friends and musicians. Like Bright Eyes is kind of this ever evolving, always changing thing. Every album's different and like there's different people. So it was really an honor to be. I didn't even know that it was a Bright Eyes thing that we were working on. I thought we were just writing because it was just totally an organic thing. We are just writing songs, kind of putting them in the bin. We didn't know what we were going to do with them. And then we go to Nick Freitas's house and just go to his basement and record demos. There's me, Connor, and Nate, and Nate comes over and we mess around with stuff, um and it just felt like we're just kids after school or something. I don't know how to say it, but it was just like it just felt like a pure expression of like where we're at. Kind of following Connor and knowing when to just, like him following me following him, taking the leads like a dance, an artistic dance.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important when you're collaborating, just knowing when to like lean back and
Is there a point at which like that demoing process is like he's expressing outwardly, or you guys are talking about the fact that, hey, I think we're angling toward a record here for this project?
I think after Bells and Whistles it was like, oh, that song's cool. Like I don't know. There were a few songs where like this song's good, you know. Obviously it's not all just me and him, all the songs that were on the record, but it's like he's like, I think a lot of those cuts that we worked on are gonna like probably be on the record, and I was like, wow, that's awesome.
That's cool.
But I think it was after the fact. I don't think it was really like we talked about making songs, great, great songs, but I don't think we talked. It wasn't like this is an album, this is the identity of the album, blah blah blah. That was like kind of put together a little bit later.
Yeah.
That was actually we were talking on the phone a lot while I was sick, which is a fast forward moment. This LA stuff, hanging with Connor and doing other things was in the winter. And then I think like right after, the total amount of songs we wrote together was like 16 or something like that.
Hmm.
And we demoed them all out. And then I went home and I was getting ready. The So So Glos were getting ready to play a show at Bowery Ballroom, our first show in a while. That was in June. I think I got back in May. I think it was May when I came home. And I noticed the whole time I was out there, like I had this nasal issue that was going on and on over a year, but I was just kind of ignoring it. Toward the end of the LA trip, I was going to doctors because it was something that was getting to a point where I couldn't ignore it. And then about a week when I got home, while we were preparing for this Bowery show with the Glows, I took a bike ride around Prospect Park, which during COVID, I would go around and do like 10 laps around the park. And this time I like couldn't get around one lap.
Wow.
And I went home and I was just like, it feels like there's something wrong with my body. And then I just collapsed for about 24 hours, slept straight, which I don't really do.
Hmm.
And then, long story short, I had a bunch of different, I thought it was a dental issue, this nasal thing. Long story short, it was cancer, T4, which is a serious level of tumor, adenoid cystic carcinoma, they call it. I found that out. Actually, I found that out a week after the Sosagos played that show. So we played
Yeah.
that show. I was recovering from surgery because I had a dental, they thought it was a dental thing, so they drained it, which was crazy. And the Glows like practiced without me. And then I just had one practice with them. Then we played this amazing show, which was one of the best shows of our lives. And it was like probably the biggest show the Glows have played in a while or
Cool.
ever headlined. And Connor was actually there. He was just in town. He came up, we did a song. Our friend Spider, that's Spiders and the Pogues. We did this Christmas song with him. He came
Dope.
up. My uncle Jerry, who plays saxophone, who's not a professional, but he's just an amazing guy. Like came up, played the saxophone. It was like a real
Special.
family
Yeah.
moment. We played a Christmas song in July, and then a week later, I was hit with cancer, and it was like the darkest
Yeah. Yeah.
thing ever, because it felt like it was a very rare, very serious cancer.
This becomes the next 8, 9 months of your life, right? Like you're,
This becomes so that was in July, June, and then July is going to a million doctors, just kind of being in shock.
yeah. I'm kind of tracing breadcrumbs through like Instagram posts on it because I wasn't following that in real time. It's
Yeah.
a little bit, but like it's inspiring to read because this happened and here I'm looking at something very, very difficult ahead right now. And then it's the next pinned post of thank you for everyone and thank you for the ability to express myself artistically through this. Like it's like we're
Well,
gonna get this, and I don't know.
this isn't about my full story. This is about the album and Connor stuff. So I'm not gonna go too far into it, but I think that like my initial reaction when I got diagnosed was Well, I launched a GoFundMe that was like so many people contributed to, mostly to deal with medical stuff and to book out the studio that my friend Rish we built. I wanted him to like clear his schedule and have like 30 days in the studio so I could record. My initial reaction was like, I need to turn this whole thing into art or else I'm gonna die. So I went straight into survival mode, like, or if I die, this is going to be an art project and this is the end. So that's what it was. And I really think that helped my spirits through the whole thing. I booked out the studio and I recorded 50 songs and I'm gonna be putting it all out this year. Like I just wanted that here I'm mixing the initial first batch of songs. While that was happening, Connor and the band were starting to record some of the stuff that the record, basically. So Connor wanted me to be there for the basic tracking, but because of I was going through treatment in September and October, I guess exactly 1 year ago,
Yeah.
I couldn't be there for the basic tracking. That was all happening. And we're kind of talking on the phone. Connor became like a really, I'm gonna cry thinking about it, but every time I would talk to him, it really like lifted me up out of this place of darkness. And he was a really good, it was just amazing. It was really amazing to me during that time. And at the darkest time where I thought I was gonna die, even in the beginning, he was like, "You're good. You're gonna be good, man." And um, so that kind of was the energy while they were making this record. And to me, um, Five Dice All Threes, Connor was like, "You should name the next So So Glos album this," and I was like, and he was so obsessed with that title that during the cancer stuff, and we would talk on the phone a lot, and I was just like, one time he was we were trying to come up with an album title. He was giving me all these titles, and I was like, those are all cool, man. And then Five Dice All Threes came up, and he was like, no, but that's like the Glows. You got to do that. And I was like, do you love that? Like
You clearly love that.
this is that album. Like take that title. He was like, yeah, and to me, that became this like metaphor for, I mean, you know, the game of threes. Threes count as zero. There's five dice and you're trying to get the lowest score.
Right.
So that to me is a metaphor for like, I can't speak for what it means to Connor, but for me, it's like you're going through this against all odds, dark thing, and you're gonna roll a perfect roll and just be all right. You know, it's rolling the dice. And
Oh,
so
it,
spiritually, like this album is really important to me for that reason.
something about the sort of looseness that brings you in a car out to LA with that not being the plan, and then the songs yielding themselves sort of as just naturally, and then the timing of like their songs are all written and demoed. You come back for this big familial show, and then immediately that news, but the album, a lot of these songs are written, and then comes the time where you're now through treatment of this. It's time to release it and put it out. It's just like, and then you're in conversation between it about all of this with each other throughout it is just very surreal timeline.
It's weird, and some of those songs are fortuitous. I feel like some of them tell a future story in a weird way. I think, I mean, that's reading really into it, but I think like, yeah, it's weird. It's a lot.
When you said you love that title and like mirrored that back to him and kind of reflected back, was like he was like, okay, I'm gonna use it. Like, how did
Yeah,
that?
yeah. He's like, yeah. I mean, it's his title. It's his
Yeah,
thing. There's songs that mention that kind of thing in the lyrics, a lot of them. So
yeah.
there's always that kind of connection. I think me and Connor both do that a lot. Like we talked about that a lot too. It's like when we make a record, we put the like we have this record Blowout, and I think I say Blowout like in almost every song on that record. And like, you know, Connor is a master at doing that kind of thing too. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like it's like a book. It's kind of like this world. It all exists in a world. I
It's like
love
the
records. I love records like that. I've always been raised on those, like Kinks records, Village Green, Preservation Society. So many different records that are my favorites are like worlds you step into, you know?
Same, yeah. It's those kind of details can be written in only for the writer and be like, someone might not pick up on this. This might be for me. And then when you can connect with those kinds of things, it's takes it to the next level. It's so good.
Yeah. And then I
Um,
went out there right after treatment, about a week after, and I'm going through 35 days of radiation and chemotherapy. That brings us to October, mid-October. And I flew out to Omaha and did like my tracking only about a week and a half to 2 weeks after treatment ended. So the vocals that I put on this record, I can hardly talk. I'm like the physical pain of going through radiation to your it leaves all these sores on your tongue and on your face. My face was like totally red, and it was the most excruciating physical pain that I felt. And I think it's cool that we left the vocals there. I could have redone them like later, but I think it's pretty hard to
it's
listen to.
what you gain in perfecting that later, you lose in that was the moment to do that. It's a product of the moment when this all came to existence. Yeah, you're pretty prominently on these two songs, like in recording. You weren't you were deep in the thick of treatment and everything when they were like tracking the basics of it. You went out there and added.
Like I didn't play guitar or bass on any of the stuff.
Yeah,
But I just put some background vocals on a few of the songs. Some the songs that we did together, I put the background vocals on. And there's a bunch of other people on there too.
yeah, very cool. We've heard the first two singles, Rainbow Overpass and Bells and Whistles. You have any we haven't heard them yet at the time this will get released, but any other songs that feel particularly like connected to?
I love the song Tiny Suicides. Bastion Ardor is one of my favorites too on there. Um, that's cool. It's about an artist who sailed away to sea and never came back, sort of.
I googled that artist when I saw
Yeah.
that. Can I ask this? I understand the process of collaborating with someone to write a song, but I also understand that that tends to be like there has to be an inflection starting point that can't be two people at the same time. How is you two starting to write these songs happen? Like, is it like, oh, I got this tiny little idea and it goes from there, or and how did that look for you guys? I'm sure it looked a lot of different ways depending on the
Yeah, it
song,
looks a
but
lot of different ways. Depends on the song, you know,
yeah.
something else, just like idea or just check this out. And it's hard to trace. It varies.
I have to imagine the process where you're like, okay, this is potentially life-ending cancer diagnosis. There has to have been like, whether you're conscious of it or not, some deep like wiring in you from what you've carried with you your whole life that like prepared you to step up against that. Is that, I don't want to be like, I should be phrasing
Yeah.
that more as a question than a statement, but like, do you feel like a
Uh,
lifetime of this other thing prepared you for this current one, even if they're unrelated?
I think so, for sure. I think like, yeah, that was kind of maybe the training wheels of like, okay, you've already had to do this hard thing. Like every single time you eat, you have to look at what that is. You have to, I kind of compare it to like the control of, I have a lot of empathy for people who struggle with eating disorders because it feels the same. The very restricted diet and control and everything, that is just psychologically a really difficult thing. And then the added factor of like, oh, this could actually kill me if I eat too much protein, and I've been dealing with that since for as long as I've lived. So it was just like the cancer was like, yes, this is fucking terrifying, but I'm gonna do what I always do, which is make music and try to turn this very negative thing into something relatively positive that can be shared. Now, like when I'm getting closer to putting it out, it feels crazier than I mean, I'm still psyched, but I forgot about the whole like thing about people that just hate on stuff, to be honest. So I was just I always thought about like, okay, this is for the people who need to hear it and for myself. So yeah, when I'm getting ready to put out my own record, I'm like, now these new thoughts of like, it put me into a state where it was just like survival. I can only describe it as survival. And for better or for worse, a lot of artists are in that mode anyway. It depends on what they've gone through or what their state of mind is. But I think like they cling to this as survival, whether they're dealing with something dark mentally, physically, spiritually, or emotionally. It's like this shit is our survival. So Connor's like that too as an artist. I think a lot of people that write songs that feel like that are actually that, you
Yeah.
know.
It strikes me as like writing the song might not solve your problem. You might not resolve the problem by way of the song you wrote, but what are you if you don't go about that process writing that song? That could be a net negative compared to the process of you gotta do the thing that you feel like you need to be doing. If you stop doing the thing that you like that gives you that feeling, that's a step toward dying, whether literally or spiritually or whatever.
To me, any form of trauma like that's expressed creatively like is once it's out, it's not gone, but it's like it's less of my thing. It's I don't know, it's therapy. I guess it's weird to do public therapy, but that's kind of the zeitgeist of this next generation anyway. So
That's
that's
true.
what art is. Art is therapy. So
I mean, it's therapy, public, but also processed as art. It's not just I'm going to put a front-facing camera on me and say my problems into social media or whatever. That's a different thing, and that is a thing that also exists, you know.
there's a fine line between art and performance art and selfies and self-hatred and self-love, right? We all walk that line.
There's little clips of you. I assume it's you face down at like your In-N-Out burger and taking your In-N-Out burger and like assembling your own thing. And can you tell us what I saw? What I saw there? And there's some
I don't
avocado.
remember that. Okay, yeah, maybe. Okay,
You
that
had like
was
a
when
homemade your own patty of some kind.
brought my own. Yeah, I think I brought my own portobello mushroom and some avocado and put it on top of an In-N-Out a veg
Yeah.
animal veg, no cheese, animal style, and I slip a portobello mushroom on there and some vegan cheese and yeah, I guess from restriction comes creativity sometimes.
Innovation.
Like if you got your hands tied, if you got both hands tied behind your back, you have to learn how to, I don't know, open a door with your mouth or something like that. I don't know. Like
I
there's
think
you're limited. You gotta use what you got.
not to force this connection, but like that happens with a lot of great music. You know, a lot of great albums are like, this is the one, like, oh, look, this is going to be the one where we start in a really raw and unplanned way writing these songs together on a porch. And now suddenly it has like direction, and limitation might be the wrong word because you can still do what you want to do. But I mean, I think it's, if you listen through the Bright Eyes records, it's like, this is the one that's like, you take what Digital Ash and a Digital Urn is. To some degree, that was decided to be something down that lane. Meanwhile, he puts out another record on the same day that is down a different lane. And
Yeah, and they're both brave, experimental, different things that when you're not comfortable, you do something new. And when I think that's why so many bands' first albums are beloved. I think what you were just talking about, because they come from a place of restriction and they then do this thing, and then they're like, oh, we made this thing, we recorded this in the bathroom, and it sounds awesome. You know what I mean? Like,
that was a major part of it. Yeah.
and I think as a band like Bright Eyes gets big and they have to find creative ways to keep mixing it up and it kind of works every time in my opinion for them because it's just like you keep being off your toes. You don't want to be comfortable. And I think Connor's an expert at that, of like always bringing someone else in or putting himself in some element where he's doing something the opposite of what he just did, which I
Yeah.
really respect as an artist. And a lot of people like that, and some people don't. They want the same thing from someone over and over again. And I think, someone like Bob Dylan or something like that, you're just not going to get that. You're going to get the opposite of what you just got. And I think that's beautiful as an artist because it's like almost this chameleon way. You're switching it up. You want me to be that? Okay, I'm going to be this, and then I'll be that, and I'll come back to it. I'm still me, but
Agree.
no one gets to decide who you are.
The way I
Um,
feel about it is some people want that, but I like rephrase it in my mind as like some people think they want that because I don't know if they actually
no.
there are so many examples of like someone who's made 9 albums that sound all the same, and there's no way someone thinks album number 9 is as good as album number 2 that is if they're just mimicking the same thing over and over again. Like with Bright Eyes, it's happened to me before. I've had like, oh, I don't know, not the direction I wanted. I selfishly wanted Bright Eyes to go, and therefore I missed it then. And then it's mine to come back to and be like,
Come
oh,
back to it and it's there for you. Yeah.
didn't know I wanted it then, but thank God
Yeah.
it's not. Thank God it's not 9 versions of Fevers and Mirrors. As great as that
Yeah.
is.
And you've got that, and then you've got the next thing. You got, that's what's great about growing with an artist. And, I think there's something nowadays that's just like everything is indispensable and everything is temporary and you can throw anything away. And I don't think we should treat like artists like that because I think like you grow with them if you love them, and you turn with them. And I think that's really special. I think a lot of Bright Eyes fans are like that. I think Connor has a beloved audience, like he's beloved and it's amazing and it's really special to
Yeah.
for good reason. I mean, just
There's probably a high ceiling Bright Eyes had available to them to if they didn't do that, it's like
yeah.
sort of like we're letting this project be what this project is, and you can take or leave it or come back to it or any of that. Did y'all the when he mentioned you in that interview, it was funny enough, it was around a question about 311.
He said nothing with me, dude.
Were you guys
Yeah,
listening to or having any conversations about 311? I want to get your end of
it
that.
was all different kind of music, but I think 311 came up some random way. Oh, because of Omaha. We were talking about Omaha, and
Yeah, yeah.
I mean they've got some good songs. We're just
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
it's
don't
good.
remember the context. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, no, I'm not coming at you as like the local 311 expert. I think I was always like fascinated. I was just always fascinated by like the two main musical exports of Omaha, Nebraska being 311 and Saddle Creek Records. And they even kind of overlap a little bit in time, which is pretty good.
Gotta be something. There's overlap to everything. There are
Mm,
gray areas in this world all over the place. So
it's true. Um, all right, so I want to ease toward letting you go. In a few, what's you
hello, we got time.
okay.
One more thing about that, like philosophy of like every album's different, everything is different. Like that's something that I really respect in an artist, and that's something also the Glows do a lot. I think all of our records are kind of
Yeah.
what one understands it, they're like almost concept albums. Like we have this album called Low Back Chain Shift, which was supposed to be an album, but it just got cut down into like an EP for a long, stupid story. But it's a concept EP. It's who does that? It's like
Concept EP.
it's about like an old New York. The low back chain shift is like the drawl for to describe coffee and talk, like a disappearing kind of old thing about the old neighborhood. And that's like, so I think like it's very different than the album that came before and the one that's after. And I think like I just think that's a really cool thing to do.
Do you think, well, first of all, very parenthetically, really quick, I will say that one of my favorite EPs of all time is I guess a concept EP, that AFI one that is put on
Oh,
around Halloween, the All Hallows Eve.
okay. I don't know.
Very good EP. Strongly recommend. Strongly recommend. But to like getting at what you're saying, like, yeah, you as Alex and you as the So So Glos get to I don't know if you actively think of it this way, but like whether that concept is inward looking or outward looking or sonic or whatever, these are like phases of your life where the creation of art is like marked by some conscious decision you've made. It's like cool to be able to look back at your life and see that you have this like output tied to that way. It's not like, oh, I got a mess of songs over the last 15 years of my life and that's it. They're like
It is a
bound together.
It's like, okay, here's me when I was 19. Here's 21. Here's me didn't join the 27 club. Cool. But I wrote this song, Fear Suicide. And, like it's a really special thing as you grow up for those who are privileged to grow up and get a little older in the rock and roll world. When you look back and see this timeline and you have it, it's really special. I think, yeah.
It's an interesting conversation to be having right now because I thought about it when I watched the Taylor Swift Eras Tour movie. Like I watched that. I watched like the 3 hour show, and it's like essentially what she's doing is like here's the concert version of all my various semi-concept albums over. They're not a bunch of concept albums, but they are eras. Like
Yeah.
everyone who's making the choice to put out art that way.
I guess artists are maybe the lucky ones, depending on how you look at it, that have like this public document of their timeline.
Yeah.
Um,
Was the process of writing 50 or so songs while going through treatment and everything, like what did that look like? You can't have felt great all the time. I know that it's probably sending you places like psychically and emotionally and everything like that. Like
yeah,
what did that look like over those months?
that looked like everything from I wrote this song called Victory Lap about a week after I was diagnosed. The really positive and really dark song. I wrote it right after I got off the phone with Conor after he made me feel good. And I was like,
Oh, cool.
a lot of songs on this album that are party songs that I wrote in the early time of having cancer that are just like looking forward. I have this song, The Future's a Riot, and it's a fucking soul song with horns and shit. Like it's insane. But I think I some of the things I wrote are really insane to write at a time where you think you might die. Some of them are hyper positive and some are hyper sad and negative. I'm really proud of it because I think it is the record that I would make, you know, I thought I was dying. So I just said, this is it. And I'll make all these songs. I don't know if it's the best thing ever, but I think it's like the best thing of that time that I could have done. Some I recorded vocals while I'm sitting on a couch dying like this, like
That's
can't move my
um,
tongue, you know? And now we're mixing it right now as we speak. So it is a real full circle moment. It's a year later after I recorded a lot of these songs and we're mixing them here. Five Dice All Threes is about to come out in this month.
yeah.
I'm probably put out the first single of my solo thing next month, which was recorded last year. They kind of, to me, I mean, this is me, this in a similar universe because like that Five Dice, some of the songs we worked on together that are on that album is like pre me getting sick. Then I got sick, and this whole album that I'm working on that's tentatively titled Victory Lap is like in the middle of it, and then recording the Five Dice stuff is in the middle of it, and there's some overlapping vocabulary. Like I put dice metaphors in a few of these songs. The third thing I think is going to be like I feel like it's a trilogy. Like whatever Glows thing is we're gonna work on next. Like in this year, we have plans to like write something. So So Glows like I feel like we're gonna just make a fucking party album. That's like dark party, celebrating the worst shit and the best is gonna come three. So like these three things that are gonna come out over the next year or two, I feel like are a trilogy in my mind, my personal artistic life.
Yeah.
And I'm psyched. I'm excited to be alive to see them come out and to see this kind of like full, it sounds very kind of like full of yourself to say, but like fucking hero's journey of this full circle, like I don't know.
It's a tribulation, a set of tribulations very worth that much output. Um,
They're all different genres. So it's like there's a power pop album, there's a post-punk album, there's a country album, and there's like, I went insane. So
yeah, that's amazing. That's
I just did everything. And I had like a band come in one day that was like a cowboy band. And I was just like, all right, I have all these country songs and like a few covers. And it's just like, it's psycho shit.
like if I don't make my country album now, I'm not gonna make it. If I don't make my,
I
I
had
gotta do it.
all these half-finished songs. I was just like, I'm just gonna finish some of them. And
And so you're speaking to me right now from Omaha. You're there prepping, or you're touring with the band?
I'm gonna be, yeah, for at least the first couple months. I'll have to see my scans and keep checking on and just make sure I'm good.
Yeah.
Um, it's constant, like the other fucking disease I have. Like there are no cancer cells in my body right now, but you got to check up and you just gotta. It's a lifelong follow up.
This is part of you now as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing September, October, November with Bright Eyes, and then we'll see. And I would love to, we'll see. We'll just see everything. And so I'm prepping for that. We'll start that next week, rehearsal stuff, and then I'm mixing the record here. So as I've done since I got diagnosed and before, I'm just not allowing myself any time to rest or do anything like that's chill. I'm just doing too much.
There's a case for that. I mean, there's a case for relaxation, but there's a case for I don't know. I mean, this line, I'm not slowing down, I'm speeding up. That line feels apt.
Rainbow overpass is like our friend Butch like does calls it like there's a rainbow bridge you cross when you die.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna fucking die.
not happening.
I'm not gonna kill myself. I'm gonna keep going, Wrestle in your demons and not letting them get to you, even though sometimes it gets hard.
Something you said in one of the things I was reading, or I can't remember where, but it was you were talking about your childhood in a way. Obviously, your circumstances you're describing are more extreme than what I'm going to say about myself, but like you're talking about like you knew the issues you had and your
Yeah.
approach to them was to not really pay attention to them, like to like essentially in some version ignore them, which is probably not advisable at all, but is like I really identified it. Like a few years ago, I started going to therapy for a little while, and that was like my first experience ever with that.
Yeah.
And I think, and I said I had a lot of good conversations about this, but like I'd basically spent my life doing that, which I think can be phrased as you ignore something and it then allows it to become worse or really solidify inside you. But I do think that there is some case to be made for like not over focusing on something as a way of not giving it an extreme amount of power to take you over, Like it's like you don't want to ignore something and have it just snowball into something horrendous. But you also, if you decide that some issue you have is everything you're focused on at all times, now your identity is your problem. And I don't think that's fucking great either. And I think that's happening a lot now.
Yeah, I think yeah, you can become your problems in a way, and you can kind of catastrophize in this. I think there's a balance between. I think it's always healthy to have therapy and talk through things with people you trust and all of that. But I think there's a balance between sometimes when you're going through something hard, you lock it away and you get through it and you go. And I was raised kind of like that a little bit, but also it will come out and you will have time
Yeah.
to process when you're ready and you deal with it. Sometimes you just got to go through something and not fully talk about it and not deal with it. Um,
I know the distinction you're making. I think
yeah,
there's
yeah,
something to it. You wrote with Connor. What was the
yeah.
process of watching those songs, whether actually there or when you did get there and contribute to them, the Mike Mogis and Nate Walcott of it all, like those songs turning into what role they all play in turning them into what you hear on a record?
Some of them we wrote with Nate too. Nate was a few of them. Yeah, I think Connor and Nate wrote some too. But I think it's amazing. I mean, they're amazing. They're like so fucking good at what they do. And I think there was a decision to keep them raw and strip down a lot of these songs, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
But just to see their like how they work is cool and inspiring. They're fucking pros. It's cool. Every band is like I feel like every band kind of only makes sense to themselves in this way. Like every band has their own kind of language. And like I can only compare it mostly to me and my brothers. Like it doesn't make sense to anyone else when
I
we're writing something or doing something. It's just we're all on this same page of like insane. And I think Connor and Mike and Nate have that, and it's just like they can speak without speaking, and it's just cool thing about it. The record starts with this like whole montage of like all these different sounds that Connor and Mike and Nate put together, and me and Rish also put together some other stuff, and it's all mixed. Adam Rish is my oldest friend and producer from Bay Ridge, who's I recorded all of my stuff with. He's on all the
nice.
glow. He's like he's a brother. We grew up since we were little kids recording tapes together. We put together like the beginning of this montage, and they put more stuff on top of it, and all of it, and we sent it back and forth. And there's this guy, Frank Diaz, who was my super in my building and maintenance, and he just handyman, and he was a really cool guy from the block, um, Brooklyn, old guy, and just his spirit was so amazing, and I really clicked with him. Well, I was staying at this place for a year, while I was going through treatment, and he's like just old school neighborhood guy. And I found out as I was going through, and we became close, that he had stage 4 cancer.
Oh,
And he actually passed away
oh,
right a week before I got my scans back in February. So this was January. Um,
mm,
Horrible because he was like a spiritual guide during this time when I was going. I would see him every day. He was up at
yeah.
7 a.m. We would talk. And one day we played dice. I showed him how to play threes and I recorded it. And
Oh,
it's on the record. And that's part of what it starts. Me and him are having a conversation about threes. I'm teaching him how to play and we're rolling the dice. And so that's kind of how the record starts. You'll hear his voice. It's a very cool voice. He's like, "Oh, three dices. I'll play that." He's like, I'm like, "No, not CeeLo threes," And then he was, just a warm, nice man. And in a time where we don't really even communicate in general with each other, and in a building that was like no one really talked to each other except for him. So I had this real connection with him.
yeah.
But then he was gone, and then I got my scans. I went to. There's a lot of stories, but I'm not going to
Oh,
tell them. But I just wanted to include that. Frank Diaz was really special, and I think Connor put a little dedication in there too.
were you along the way aware that he was struggling with this and this when this was coming? Like, did you know he had cancer that whole time?
Over time, I found out
Okay.
after months. He didn't tell me after months. I don't know if I told him about my stuff
Oh
until
my gosh.
month or a month and a half. I think when I told him, he was like, "Yeah, I think me and you were in that same." I actually remember it. He said, "I think me and you were in that same boat." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was just like, talk about not talking about anything. He was just
For real.
going through this, and I didn't even know, had no idea.
I mean, that's another, that's like, there's so many of these things serendipity feels like a cheap word for it, but like,
Really does feel
uh, some
cosmic.
level of like, I think you were a person there for that person and that person was there for you. And it's like another layer of
To
that
me,
story.
that's what this record is about. Um, that relationship and Connor, like, when I first got to LA, it was like it wasn't really a creative thing. And then maybe our hanging out like kind of lifted it into this place of like,
Just you guys hanging out, bumping 311 all day.
no,
Keep going. Sorry.
I'm gonna get crucified by Bright Eyes. But yeah, we're hanging out and it was like, yeah, it was good vibes. And I think it lifted us both into like just a healthy place. And then I was down. And then Connor was really there for me when I would talk to him on the phone. And it really, this record to me is like about taking care of people and
Yeah.
having people take care of you. That's what life's about, I guess. So
The record's about that and the life's about that. I really appreciate you giving that insight into it. I think I'm already excited to hear the record and it'll be cool to bring some of that background into it. It feels privileged to get to talk to you about it.
I knew you asked me a few of the songs, but there's this other song called Paradolia that's not on the album, but I think it's going to be coming out some other time that we worked on together. That's a really cool one too. Yeah, Paradolia is like seeing things that aren't necessarily there. Like an example is like seeing like a face in an outlet or something like that.
Oh yeah. That's what that word means?
Yeah, that's what the word means.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think in the conversation we had, I think he talked about like, yeah, when you just hear a word, yeah, like I like that word. What is it? He talked about oscilloscopes on one of his songs. Like, yeah,
Oh,
I'm gonna write that into a song. And I think I
yeah.
said it. I think I said at some point in the conversation the word archipelago, and he's like, "Archipelago, cool word.
Oh, that's a cool word. Cool word.
What's your role in the band?"
I'll be playing bass.
Sweet.
Is what I do in the glows and do a little, singing, background vocals and stuff, and whatever
Cool.
else I need to do. If I need to like play the triangle, then I'll have to
You'll
do
play
that.
it.
Play
Well,
the
nice.
kazoo. I've been known to play a kazoo or two.
Well, I hope you're there. I hope you're there in Seattle. I plan to ferry
Oh
over
yeah,
and head down into Seattle. So,
I don't
um,
think that's on the initial run, but it
oh,
is
not the initial run, but it's announced. But
next
I don't
year.
know.
It's
Maybe.
2025.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe I'll
We'll
come
see.
out. I'll
Sweet.
be around.
Where can people find you, So So Glows, anything to watch for some of the stuff you've talked about that's coming?
I'm on the evil social media stuff.
What I could say for your own healthy usage of it is I think people could go to that to find what's coming without needing to know that they're going to have you like dumping 9 posts a day on them every day.
I
You
won't
know.
be doing that to you. Yeah, I don't even want to do that to myself. I've been through a lot of social media, a lot. So, yeah, click, subscribe, like, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Alex Orange Drink, So So Glows. Leave the W out of glow for war, no war. I'm really psyched to see this record come out and to play, and it's cool.
Awesome.
Life's hard, but you just got to keep going through it. Just keep doing it.
Right on. We're going to go forth with that. Thank you, Alex.
Find the light.
Thank you so much to Alex for joining me. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe. Go check it out on Patreon if you want a zine about Bright Eyes, or if you want to unlock the semi-infamous Casadega episode of the show, which is only available there. That's patreon.com/After the Deluge. You can email me at delugepodcast@gmail.com or find me on social media under the handle Routine Layup. Thank you.